Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Hampton. Today we're going to do a short lesson about how to take a static HTML5 website that uses the Foundation framework, and we're going to convert that into a PHP micro framework using a product called Silex. Silex is based off of Symfony 2, which is a full stack framework, but we can use Silex to sort of add a little bit better routing capabilities, back-end capabilities, database environments, just really help ourselves out further than just a typical PHP static site where you have pages, you add PHP to the end of it, and then the navigation kind of looks a little messy. So we'll use it to create a little bit more of a RESTful URL structure, and we're going to do it starting with Foundation. So let's take a look, and we'll get started now. Here you have the Foundation site for Ribbit. This is Build a Self-Destructing Message App. This was a course taught by Gil here recently, and it uses Foundation 5, and we're going to take that static code and move it over into Silex. This is sort of a foundation.dev as local environment for me. That's something that's just going to use as a reference. We can go back to and make sure everything's working as we expect. As you can see here, we have a slider that goes through. You can play pause the slider, allow it to automatically run, drop downs for navigation, then a couple of modals that pop up. So we have a download the app, and we have a text me the link. So this will pop up a little window, and then at the bottom is a video as well, that when you click on it, it pops up a video showing you the Ribbit app intro. So in order to do this, and to save a little bit of time, I did a forum answer a little bit back, about a month ago, for a question about the best PHP micro framework. There are definitely a lot of options out there. I just picked Silex as I've had experience with it, used it a little bit, and I really like the structure of it. This video here is on our forum, so just feel free to log in and watch this, and that'll get you more into the information about how to install Silex, so on and so forth. We're going to skip a little bit ahead, and I already have a GitHub set up here at Hampton Palk under GitHub, and then Silex Ribbit Live. You'll see there's already some files in here. You're more than welcome to clone this, pull it down to your local environment, and code along, or after this is archived, you can go back and take a look at it later. I will continue to leave this repository open for public, so you can just pull down and use it anytime you want. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is actually download the files for the Foundation course, the actual HTML files. So if you go to the library and scroll down, you'll find a Foundations Basic course. Click on Foundations Basic, you'll see it here, and it will take you into the Framework Basic course, and we're actually going to go all the way down to the bottom to what's new in Foundations 5. And then let's say use the new interchange features. So new interchange features, if you click on that video, and I'm going to pause it so we don't hear it. Okay, and then on the far right, you'll see project files. You download that, it'll be a zip file. I'm going to switch over, download this, and you'll see here we have 6.4, which is the file we just downloaded. And here we have some final files and then start files. Get rid of the start files, we don't really need those. Don't really need the zip anymore. And the installation of Silex was a fat installation or a fat archive. So this was the previous install. This is what you'll get when you download Silex, but you'll see that in the previous video that I was speaking of earlier. In here, you'll see basic files that you're used to seeing in HTML. So an index.html, a few small partials that are used within Foundation, a fonts folder, and some assets folders, CSS, images, and JavaScript. We're going to use those to convert over into our Silex application. So you can either pull them over into a local environment to use as a reference, or just keep them here for now, and then we can copy and paste from here. I'm actually just going to pull them down into my coding environment. So let's do that. All right. And then we'll get started by looking at just that particular one. So here we have standard HTML, nothing really spectacularly different than what you're used to seeing, and then some partials, and then our typical CSS files, as well as local styles, so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to tuck this away, use it as a reference a little bit later. So let's go ahead and open up our Silex folder, which we've already downloaded from a previous version or from the previous video. And we will go here to developer, and then we're going to use Silex Ribbit. Okay, so this is a very basic, what we've done here is we have the app file. Now, app is our main file for everything that we're going to do inside of Silex. It's really based around what Sinatra has accomplished, which is a single file web application. Now, we're going to have all of our routes in here, any includes that we need. It's all going to happen inside here. So what we have right now is 3 get routes. We have a get for root, we have a get for hello, and then an optional name argument, and then we have a get for just hello. I'm going to switch over to the browser and take a look at my local environment to kind of give you a real quick tour of what those are doing. So let's see here. We don't need this any longer. And we'll leave that over here just in case I need to reference it again. Don't need that. And here we have silex.dev. So if we go to hello, you'll see it returns hello, which in our code, that's exactly what we're expecting it to do. If we go to hello, just the root, like this, it will forward us to hello. So there's the forwarded hello. And you see root does a redirect to hello. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to read. Now this one's a little tricky, but very nice feature. You can just add an optional argument here, in this case, name. So I can type in anything I want here after a second slash, and then say hello Hampton. And then it will add my name. It does take into account capitals for right now. There are many things that you could do to better secure this so you don't have any weirdness that could happen possibly, but this is just a good example of how we can use the routing to help us out. So, all right, so that's just our review so far, and all those files here are what is currently committed at GitHub at the moment. So we don't really need to go any further than this in regards to the commits. So our next step is we're going to need to add in some kind of templating in order to take those HTML files, bring them over, and display them and use Twig and URL generation, which are parts of Silex, in order to make our application work a little nicer. So let's go ahead and start by adding in our templates and views. So when you look in our composer.json file, you can see that the FAT archive actually downloaded all of this for us, and that's all stored here in our vendor folder. So it's out of our way, but we don't have to see it, don't have to look at it, and we're only going to focus on what's inside of our web folder. But what we are going to be using is we're going to be using Twig, and we're also going to be using URL generation, which are already here and ready for us to use. So we don't need that file. We're going to go in and start with adding a registration. So let's look over here and see what we need with Twig. So Twig is a templating engine. It's what we're able to plug into and use instead of typing PHP, echo, and HTML special characters, so on and so forth. We can just simply say with 2 squiggly braces on either side of the actual variable, and that will actually echo our var. We can even pipe it to escape or pipe it to E, and that will do actually all of the special characters escaping. So definitely helps us out. You're able to do some template-oriented syntax, like here we have the for user in user, so instead of typing a for each or just a standard for loop with PHP tags, we can do it a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. We can also continue to use echoing with the Twig tags inside of this as well. So it's going to allow us to really clean up just a standard HTML file. So in order to do that, we were going to switch over and look at the Silex homepage. So in the Silex documentation, which is at silex.senseolabs and then .org/documentation, in here we're going to want to use Twig as a built-in service provider. So it tells us that we can use Twig path, Twig templates, options, so on and so forth. But first we have to register any kind of service provider that we want to use by using this code here. So we're just going to copy it over and then I will explain it as we add it to our code. So we're going to go here and add it in here. Okay, so doing this, we're technically saying we want to register a new provider. It's in our Silex namespace, which is why you see the new Silex and then provider, and then Twig service provider, which is a class. if you don't have any experience with object-oriented PHP, that's fine. I'll try to talk you through it a little bit here, but what we're going to do is have a course out next week that's going to go over the basics of object-oriented PHP, which will definitely help you understand this. So when you come back and watch this another time, you're going to get an even better understanding of what's happening here. And then we're going to pass through another argument here called an array, and then that we're defining a twig path as our views. So that's telling us that where we store our templates, or where we store our view files, are in a views folder. So that we're registered there, we need to add a view folder. So I'm going to go over into our web folder, and I'm going to add a new folder called views. Okay, let's make sure that showed up in the right place. It didn't. Okay, let's do it again. And okay. Let's just go to Finder. Oh, there it is. A delay. Maybe it's on my side. Who knows? Okay, so in here, that's where we're going to have our view files. In this particular case, I'm going to start with just a standard index file. So we'll save it. And in this case, we're going to need to name it to tell it that it's a twig file. Otherwise, just saying it's a PHP file or an HTML file isn't really going to help Silex tell us what's going on. So index, and then .php, which is our standard language here, and then we're going to go with twig as our final. Hit save. Now we've got this. Okay, so that's one way we can add templates in by using twig, and we add a index.php.twig file in our views folder. The next thing we need to do is register a URL provider, and we're going to do that with the URL generator service provider. So let's switch over back to the documentation, and then here we can remove twig for now, and then go and look at URL generator. So this is another service provider, which you get to it by saying the documentation on the right, the service providers, second one down, URL generator. The way this is going to help us once we register it is that we can say things like bind to homepage. So then from there on out, we can just simply say generate URL homepage, and that's going to echo the proper URL for our homepage using our built-in routing. So this is going to help us, maybe not right now, but certainly in the future of our project. So I'm going to copy over the registration, paste it in right underneath, and save that. We don't have to do anything further right now. So I say let's see if we can get this to work by adding in a call to the actual twig system. So let's do that now. And we're just going to modify our root route. These we'll leave alone for now. We're not going to mess with them any further. But here, instead of redirecting, what I want to do is I want to take the app and then call twig, which will access the actual twig provider. And then we're going to call a render method. All right. And inside of the render method, we pass through our file name, which in our case is index.php.twig. Okay. Now, let's see if this works for us. All right. All right, and we've got our file that says hi there. Pretty boring so far, but don't worry, it's going to get a lot better soon enough. All right, so that marks off enough for this commit. So let's go ahead and create a commit message and go from there. So let's see, where am I? All right, I am in the correct folder, so I'm going to do a git status, see what's changed. Here we've updated our app, and we've included a new folder. So I'm going to do a git add dot, and git status to make sure. Okay, that's good. Now, git commit -m and pass through a message, add twig and index file. Great. Now push it up. Once that's done, I'm going to switch back over to the GitHub, which we'll see we have 2 commits. Not sure if this is instantaneous. It looks like it is. There we've just added our twig and index file. So these are the steps so far that we've gone through. And let's see, next we're going to add some features called a trait. So let's head back over to the main documentation. And we should see something on traits under usage. So Silex give you this wonderful feature called a trait. Now, you do have to have 5.4 or later to benefit from this, but you guys should all pretty much be on 5.5 by now. Here you're going to see what we're doing is adding in these special traits by extending the application class. So we start with use Silex application, which is saying when we call application, we actually mean application within the Silex namespace. And then we're going to create a new class and then add these traits that are based in the application class itself. So let's do that now, and then I'll explain what it's going to do to help us out a little bit. So I'm just going to start by grabbing these first few lines and heading back over to our code. Now, here's where we define our app, and we're saying app is equal to a new instance of the Silex namespace application class. Well, we actually want to bypass that by starting out with our own class. And here I will actually call this, instead of, I'll call it Rivet application. Okay, so there's the Rivet application extending application. Now, not going any further, we need to add in the traits that we need. And the idea here is not to add more than you need, just only what you need at the time you need it. In our case, I want to add the trait for just twig. So let's head back over to the documentation and go back to twig itself. So head up to the top, documentation, twig service provider. Now, under each one of the service providers, you'll find a little section that says traits. And here we go. There's traits. What this is going to do is give us a little bit of an extra clean feature. Here, it's just render. That's the main trait that we're going to use. And all that's doing is instead of saying, I want to use, here we can look at our current code, instead of using app and then calling to twig render, we'd be able to just simply say app render. So if we did that right now, we'd have an error, but we need to actually add in the trait for Silex or for twig inside of our Silex application. Now we've already namespaced application, so we don't need to do that any further. So we can use and then application twig trait. Let's save that. Actually, nope, we don't need to save that yet. We need to make a modification. So here, now on line 12, you can see we're calling the Silex application. Instead, we need to call our new Rivet application. Save that, and let's see if it still works the same. No, okay, so it's not Silex Rivet application, it's application. Let's see. My error was on line 12, Silex not found. Okay, line 12, yes, no. It is going to be new Rivet application, not Silex, namespaced Rivet application. There, now we're back. So a lot of work for just a little bit of clean code. That's really what we've done here. We've registered a new trait and given ourselves the capability to add more traits as we need them. So we'll say more traits in the future. Okay, we don't need them now, so we're not going to add them. But those are our more traits. That's where they're going to go. Let's save this and go ahead and commit our code. So same thing, get status. Let's make sure we haven't changed anything we didn't want to. We've only changed the one. Git add dot git commit, and then add traits. All right, looks like we're complete. Double check. Good. There's our commit to add the traits. All right, so now that we have extended our class, added some traits, and got our routes going, what we need to do is move to bring over our code from our Rivet static page. So there's going to be a lot of copying pasting here that's coming from our original code. So we're going to go back over for now to just our index.php.twig file and delete this. And then I'm going to switch over. Let's see if I have another window open here. I do. So here's our code from the Foundations course. And in here we're going to start with our index.html file. So copy all that, then head over to our other one and paste it all in. Save it. Let's see what it looks like. which I'm assuming will be terrible. Yep, all our data's in there, but there is no real, you can even see our modals are visible, they're not hidden. So clearly we need to add in our assets, which is our JavaScript, our CSS, our images, and anything else such as fonts that we need to bring in. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to put them in our web folder, but we're going to actually put them into a new folder in there called assets. So do another new folder inside of web, assets. All right. So in this case, we're going to need to bring over all of the information from this area, CSS, fonts, image, and JS, and put them into that assets folder. So instead of doing it here, I'm actually going to open this up in Finder, and we'll actually just copy these folders over. So copy those, back to developer, back to our sites, and we were doing the Silex ribbit. Here's our vendor folder. And, not vendor. We don't want to go in there. Get out of there. We know not to mess around in that folder. Unless you just want to browse code, that's a really good idea. But please don't just add something to vendor. You'll end up messing it up, which I almost did. Okay, so look at our assets folder. Nothing in here yet until I hit Command V and then head back over. We should have everything here. All right, yep, CSS. That's the wrong folder. All right, here we go. Web, assets, CSS, great. Fonts, images, and JavaScript. Great. All right, so let's see what it looks like. Probably still bad. Yes, and that is why. Let's do an inspect element. We can see our next class. Next thing to do is we need to modify these because they're not in just the root CSS normalized. They're all in an assets folder now. So we need to basically, no matter where we are on the site, we want to be able to reference back to our assets. So if we look at the network, you can actually see that they're all 404ing. So the idea here is to remove all of these 404 not founds for each of these files. So let's go back over here to our main app file. All right. Actually, we don't need to do it there. We need to go into our index file under the views. All right, so here's where we need to make our change. And the way we're going to do this is by leveraging Twig. And we can do that by adding our braces here. I'm going to hit save on this. My browser, or excuse me, my editor isn't picking up that it's a Twig file, but now it is. Okay. So let's go in here and we're going to add app.request. Okay, and then that's just the main request coming from our application instance, which we already know we have available to us. And then get base URL. All right, now that's going to give us our main URL of where we are currently in the site. But now we need to add a /assets to the end of that. That should make the normalized CSS file not 404. Let's see if that actually worked. Hey, what do you know? I know what I'm doing today. Okay, so now we're good, but we got to do this to the rest of them. So just patiently watch all of this happen. And we're going to copy this amount to, let's see, I think right there, yeah, and paste them in. I don't know where I'd be without copy and paste, but clearly not as fast as I think I am. Okay, same thing goes for JavaScript. We're all good there. Just as a quick idea, look in the footer. Yep, stuff in our footer as well. So we'll add that and do the same here. And go back to our page and refresh. Hi, look at that. Okay, let's see if it's all working the way we expect. Okay, no, it doesn't look quite right. Okay, so why is that? If we go into our code and we take a look in, you'll see that we were using Foundation to swap out and interchange content. So we're actually going to remove this whole entire section, just this part. And we're going to just assume we're looking at a large screen for now, just for clarity. Okay, and we're going to go over to our other file, which is here. That's the actual content. So copy all of that. So we don't need that JavaScript at the bottom of it. Copy that in. Head back over and paste it in. Ooh, that's messy. All right, little tab cleanup here. that'll do for now. Now let's take a look. Okay, so now we have our slider. That seems to work fine. Our modal's working well. Let's see, we're missing an image here, so we may need to look into our code for that. If we click it though, we do get the modal, so that's good. So we need to fix an image link. That's clearly an issue. So we'll do the same thing. We'll head back to our index file. We're going to look for an image tag. All right, there we go. So now, again, we can paste in the same, whoop, don't do that. We're going to paste in the same amount here, the same information here. It's still going to be in the assets folder, except now, paste that in. We're going to put it in the assets and image folder. Let's make sure that that's right, IMG. Yep, that's right. Save that and cross our fingers. Perfect. Okay, so let's look at the two sites and make sure we can continue forward. All right, so this is the foundation.dev, and this is our silex.dev. So if we take a look at the two, that looks the same. Scroll down. That looks the same. So it looks good. We can click on our modals. So as far as converting it over, it's really nice. So that's good. That's all well and good. But what's the point of all of this? Well, the idea is we want to clean this up, make it easier to work on, easier to modify, easier to extend in the future. The way we're going to do that is by working with layouts and with partials. Before I go any further, though, there's a step that I just forgot, which is always do it once you reach a certain point of stopping, and that's commit. All right, let's see what we've done here. Get status. So we've modified our index PHP twig file, and now we have some untracked files, which is the DS store. That's interesting. We don't really want those. So what I'm going to do is make sure we have a getignore file here, which we do, but it's spelled wrong. So let's rename that. G. Yeah. Dyslexia, folks. It's not a joke. All right. Now let's try that again. There we go. So now it's ignoring the DS stores. So we'll do git add dot git add dash a, which will show us our status of adding a bunch of new files, modifying files, and then renaming our getignore file. Let's do a commit. Rename getignore, add initial foundation files. That should be good enough. Push it up. Head back over and double check that we have a new commit. We do. Okay, so now we can move on knowing that we have a nice place to go back to if everything goes awry, which it won't, because it never does, right? All right, so we're going to do the cleanup by creating first a layout. A layout's a pretty simple pattern. It's very common across frameworks, whether you're talking about dealing with Ruby on Rails or even JavaScript frameworks. There's partials involved, and a layout is just sort of like a master template file. So we're going to need to create a few things. We're going to need to create a folder, and we're going to put that in our web folder. Everything needs to go in our web folder. We'll call that layouts. Right, there we go. And we're also going to have partials, which is another new folder, which will hold our modals, anything that we can use interchangeably throughout the site, but isn't necessarily a wrapper for the entire content. So in our layouts folder, we're going to want to add a new file. That file is going to be our master file. So I will actually call it main. php.twig. It's in our layouts folder, which you see here. Hit save, and we're good. Okay. Now, in order to really clean this up, I'm just going to bring over mostly everything that we're going to need that wraps our content inside of our main file. So that's always going to be information that came from our index view. So we certainly need this information, the HTML. I mean, the header's always going to be there, and then we're talking about maybe adding the nav as well. So let's start with just bringing over the header information. I'll delete that from here. And then we're also going to go all the way down to the bottom and grab the last HTML tags and our footers. So I'll cut that out of there, save that, and then I'm going to paste it in. Okay, looks pretty good other than a little bit of tab messiness, but we can always clean that up later. So here we just need to add our content. So we need to have our nav. We need to have our actual body as well, which is our actual content. So we need to bring that over. And in order to do that, we're going to use what's called a block. So in this case, if we do block, oops, that's not right. Let's switch it over to twig. There. Now, this is twig syntax for content blocks. In this case, we're going to call this the body block. And we don't want to add anything in here. If you add something in here, that will be replaced whenever you call the block from the actual file itself. And we're going to do that. Let's get rid of this nav comment by going over to our index.php.twig and do the same thing, block. Now, in this case, we actually want the information to be inside of the block. So we'll go all the way to the bottom and then paste in end block. Now, this information, when this file is called up, is going to appear right here. So all of this will go into here. We have one step left here, and that's to tell this file that when you open me up, because we're routing to index.php.twig, when you actually route to me and open me up, we need to be able to tell it, I want to use main as my layout. So we do that by using extends. Let's see, blade extends, perfect. And our view that we're going to be extending is going to be layouts, actually, no, not blade, because we're not in Laravel. Okay, so let's do that again, extends. Let's see if that, there we go. All right, extends, and then our template, which is in layouts, and then main.php.twig. So our first line, line 1, is telling us we would like to use main.php.twig, and the second content is the block, which actually is not called name, it's called body. That's how we match it up. And that's going to populate all of this information inside of our extended layout, inside of this block body. Let's see if this worked or if we've got some errors. Okay, something went wrong. All right, so main.php.twig is not defined. On GitHub, go over to, let's see, repos, and then Silex Ribbit. Let's see here. And then our views, and then our, aha, there's my mistake right here, folks. Again, putting it in the wrong folder. It's a champion move on my part. All right, so our layouts and our partials actually need to be inside of our views folder. So let's reveal that in Finder and make a few moves around here. All right, developer, sites, and then our Silex Ribbit, then our web folder. And here we need our layouts and our partials to actually be where they belong, which is in our views folder. So that way, this is the referencing in the correct place. Now let's see if it works. Okay, so that was great. A little tiny mistake there, but it makes all the difference in the world when you put things in the correct folder. So here we can actually see, if we scroll down, we're still getting all of our information. Our modals are all still here, and our text me the link modal still works. So everything's still good, except now we have a much cleaner area to work with. So now we only have to worry about only adding what's in the body itself. But let's use this same pattern and get this going a little bit further. Now, we want to take this top bar, which is really just our navigation. I'm going to cut that out as well. And I'm going to create a partial in our partials folder. New file, paste that information in here, which we're going to need the nav actually in our template wrapper, or actually our main file. Let's see, we'll call this nav.php.twig. All right, and now we go back over here. That's all cut out, that's all gone. So if we, okay, yep. Just going to close that. Go back to our layouts main. All right, let's refresh it. So what you'll notice, our nav disappeared. So we've actually, in a sense, removed it completely. So we need to include it back. But we don't want to put it just anywhere. We don't want to put it in our index file where we have to call it every single time. We actually want to put it in our layout. So taking it out of here, we're going to put it back in the body, but we're going to include the actual nav partial as well. So we're going to do that with some twig syntax here, and then we're going to say include, and then our actual nav file, which is in partials, and then nav.php.twig. See if that fixes it. Cool, that's good too. All right, so now we have cleaned that bit up a little bit. We've removed even more from our content body. Okay, modals. We don't really need the modals on our index content. So let's do the same thing here. We're going to move all of this modal here, the form modal. I'm going to take that one and remove it. So save that. Create a new file in partials again. Paste that in. That is our form modal. We'll call those modals. You can start to see a pattern forming here, hopefully. And then again, we don't need to show it here. We need to include it somewhere else. So we're going to actually include it at the bottom of our document. So we'll say we'll do it underneath here. And in this case, we're going to include partials and modals. Okay, so refresh. Let's see if this still works. Still works, great. So if you view the source, you can actually see that our modal should be here at the bottom. So we've got a video modal and a form modal. And then that's still being included, but it's being included through a partial. So that's really what we want. Okay, next step would be to keep looking down the index file, see what else we could take out. Feature content we want to keep. Treehouse content we definitely want to keep. The footer and the modal here. We could definitely get rid of both of these. So we can cut this modal out first, and we move over to our modals file. We can just paste it in. Oops, let's paste it without removing old code. All right, refresh that before we go too far. Make sure our video modal still works. It does. That's good. All right, and then go back to our index file, take a look at our footer, and do the same thing, page footer. So we'll cut that out. That actually needs to go into our main file. Now, the nice part about using Silex and using Twig is that, say, for instance, we want to come in here and add our page footer. But you may want to change some of the content on the site itself while you're doing each individual file. Say, for instance, you're on the index file, the main file of the site, and you want the footer to say something a little bit different. Well, we're still going to get rid of that, and we're still going to use the main file, and we're still going to use a block. So in this case, we have like this body block. I'm going to paste it right here, which is our where our footer content itself actually is, which if you look at our page, it just says Ribbit by Treehouse Island Inc. And then paste the end block in over here. In fact, I'll just do a little tabbing to make it a little cleaner, easier to read. Nice indenting. Okay, so here, if we refresh our page, we're still, oh, we're going to get an error. That's not what I wanted. All right, block, yes, body, not body. Let's do a new name, footer. All right, now we have footer, refresh, yay, no errors, and 2013 ribbit. Well, it's not 2013, but maybe we want to live back in time a little bit, but only on the index page do we want to make that change. So I'm just going to go outside of our body block, which you see here, and go to the very end. It doesn't have to be at the end. It can be at the top. We can do block, and then footer. And our content was a paragraph tag, and then it said 2013. Well, let's just say, hey man, it's 2014. Save that, refresh, and now you can see that we've modified our footer. If we were to go to any other page in our site that uses the same main wrapper or the same layout, it would not actually change it whatsoever or at all. So that it's a pretty clean content, pretty layout, pretty clean layout. We don't really have any excess data in here that we don't need. We've got our layout, we've got our body block, we have our footer. We're doing some includes here. I'm sure there's more we could do, but in the sense of time, we won't go too much further. So now we've actually converted the Foundation Frameworks Ribbit promo site, which is a single-page site, into a micro framework using Silex and PHP. So now you're able to extend it further, add greater templating, add more pages, more routes, more back-end code for data collection, so on and so forth. Add a database if you want. So all of this is capable by using Silex, which is a PHP micro framework. Hopefully this helps you out. If you have any questions, please send me a tweet at Hampton POC, or you can send an email or write on the forums. Either a staff member or a student will get back to you.